pretty common goal for chess players is to make it to a rating level of 2000. I don't know, there's just something about that number that makes you feel like you're gonna, I don't know, be a real chess player when you get up to that level. Personally, my big goal is to get the National Master title. And, I don't know if that's ever actually going to happen, but it kind of gives me a goal to shoot for and something to kind of push toward. But the first step in becoming a National Master is to be able to defeat a National Master in a game. And that's why I'm very excited to show you this game today. You might have already seen my recent video with Kyle, who is a chess player and author. If you haven't seen it, I'll link to it up there. And in the same tournament where I played against Kyle, he played against a National Master and he won. In his book, which is called My Chess Memoir, I have it right here, Kyle talks about sort of his own push toward the 2000 level rating and beyond. And this particular game actually pushed him quite a bit beyond that level. And by the way, if you haven't already checked out his book, I definitely recommend it. I think you'll like it a lot. There are some links in the description below if you're interested. So I hope you enjoy this game. There are lots of great little lessons in here from two very strong players kind of battling it out. So let's dive in. So Kyle, welcome back. Thanks for joining me for yet another video. This one is kind of cool. So we have a local legend, maybe I could say, a 13-year-old boy named Calix, who is an amazing chess player and has really been improving quite rapidly, and pretty recently got his National Master title here in Canada with the Chess Federation of Canada. However, in this last tournament, a little feather in your cap, you managed to pull off a win against Calix, who is a National Master and the highest rated player in the tournament, which goes to show you that in chess, anything can happen, right? Like you never know. And not only that, but I will say that you managed to do this using the perhaps infamous London system. And so I am very interested to see how this goes.
Yeah, well, yeah, more than a little feather in my cap. Probably the highlight of my entire chess career. I mean, I've been playing since 2011 and never beaten a national master before, of course. But yeah, no, anything can happen in chess. And yeah, I decided if I was going to be a national master, might as well do it on hard mode and do it with the London system. But, jokes aside, I have had a lot of success with it. The London system, it's basically like I never get killed out of the opening, and that's pretty much all I ask for. I don't study a lot of opening stuff, so having a structure I'm familiar with and plans that I understand goes a long way. So yeah, the London worked out for me, certainly in this game.
It's the opening that I used to use for white all the time. And I know you have some little anecdotes from your book to bring up. Well, I have an anecdote from your book as well, which is one of the very last games in your book was from the first classical tournament that I played in. And while you were playing that game, I was playing against another very prominent character in your book. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but her name is Ella. And I was playing white and I was playing the London system.
Nice tie-in. I didn't realize that was the opening you played in that game, but I remember meeting you at that tournament. I remember the event well. So okay, that's a nice little tie-in.
There you go. The London system just comes full circle. It's just
beautiful.
All right, without further ado, show us through this game.
So let's dive in. So I was white. This is the third round of the tournament. And I was pretty intimidated. Calix had the previous tournament that we had in the area. Calix won with a perfect 5-for-5 score. So, I mean, he's a national master. That's intimidating, but he's like a national master who's like on his game. So I was pretty terrified. So yeah, the London just sort of setting up with the normal structure. This is a very common thing. You basically push the C pawn and then get the queen out to put pressure on the B2 pawn. So a very common thing, I think the computer line is to bring the queen all the way out to B3, and then a lot of times it'll get traded, and that's just like a very common queenless sort of middle game position. I hate those positions though, and especially like a very common line is like here and don't take right away, but play C4. And this is like nice for black. Like I try to get this position when I played black against the London. Right. So I don't want to see it on the board when I'm white. So I instead play this queen to C2 line, which a lot of times ends up the queen gets harassed by the bishop from F5, which does end up happening in the game. But there's sort of some tactics you can do to make that position not so bad. So anyway, so queen C2.
There were definitely tactics happening in this game. I remember from looking through, it's like, oh my goodness, we'll get into it.
Yeah, so G6 makes sense. Now you can play the bishop up to F5, and it's defended. Although even if you decided you wanted to play bishop F5, it's if you take it as white, then the b pawn hangs and you can't defend the
Right.
rook. So a lot of times you don't even actually need to defend the bishop on f5. But he does because he probably wants to fianchetto his dark square bishop anyway. So h3, I'm planning to eventually tuck my dark square bishop back to h2. And then he plays bishop f5. And then this is sort of the little tactical secret of these positions, which is you could move your queen, but then you don't necessarily want to. The thing that I sort of know to do in these positions is when my queen gets attacked, you play d takes c5. And now you attack their queen. They could, if they want to, uh, take on c5, but now you can play queen b3,
Right.
and they're not threatening to take your queen with their queen. You have a tempo on the b pawn, and it's sort of like you've distracted their queen to like a little bit of a worse square. So I've had this in tournament
Mm.
games before that have turned out well for me. And the nice thing is they can't even really play rook here to guard it because the bishop's eyeing that
Yeah.
square.
Right.
So,
Nice.
so that's a nice sequence. The other option they have, and this is what Khalix actually did, is they can just take the queen. And then, but I kind of like this position because then I take their queen, and when they take back, we're only on move 10, and I've kind of got this structural concession. They have these double
Yeah.
isolated pawns that kind of look ugly. So I don't know. I like this position. So this is actually what happened in the game. And then you get this nice quick knight a3,
Oh
which
yeah.
hits the bishop. Got to move the bishop, and then or got to move the bishop. I've actually a lot of times in rapid games, people just sack the exchange here.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, and so it's sort of like you end up in positions like take, and then they get basically their dark square bishop eyeing that, and so you end up getting like a lot of pressure for the exchange. So that anyway,
Right.
a bit of an
Can you
aside, but
like?
I've seen that work, and I was a little bit afraid. Like I'm playing a national master, he probably like knows this line. He's probably
Right.
planning to sack the exchange. Like I'm probably walking right into his trap.
Right.
Um, that's how I felt anyway. But no, so
Yeah.
he played bishop back, keeping the material. But then now I get this nice knight b5. So quickly, my
Oh
knight,
yeah.
which was on b1, in two hops, is now on quite a nice square, threatening the fork here on c7. And so he steps up to guard that. And sometimes the king stepping up like this can be useful because there's no queens on the board. It's like maybe you don't want to bother castling. The king is active. But I think in this case, I have enough stuff kind of active that the king gets in a little bit of trouble here. So I
Mm.
played check, and so he sort of is forced to take, and now I felt like this was kind of like quite a nice square for my bishop because this knight on f6 is pinned,
Mm-hmm.
and plus I might get f3 in at some point and kind of tempo this bishop, and
Mm.
I don't know, it just feels like this has been a pleasant opening for me. So I was feeling pretty good here. Like I felt like no big surprise out of the opening. I didn't get killed by some crazy sideline that he knew. Like I think I have a pretty solid position here so far. So yeah, takes, and then he plays bishop g7, but even still, the knight is pinned because the bishop itself is not defended.
Yeah.
So I played f3 to chase away the bishop. He played bishop c2, and now the interesting sort of stuff starts happening because I realized like this f6 knight is pinned, so this d pawn is now suddenly quite weak because the bishop's not guarding it anymore. So I
Right.
played knight c7, and now I'm hitting the rook, but I'm also hitting this d pawn, which is hanging basically, right? Like
Right.
the knight can't take it without dropping the bishop on g7. So this is like getting a little dicey for him. Um,
Yeah.
he played rook a5, which is logical, move the rook and defend the pawn. And then it begs the question, well, can I kick the rook off that square? And it turns out, yes, I can with b4. Now, this is a little bit of a scary move to play just because you look at this c3 square and you're like, oh boy, I can really imagine his dark square bishop,
Right. Yeah.
causing some chaos on that square.
Yeah.
So, it's a little bit of you got to be pretty sure what you're doing to play b4. It feels like it's creating a weakness, but I felt tactically it made sense. And I actually thought I might have had a forced draw here, which I would have been very happy to take. So he plays rook a3, and I had intended to play, and I did play knight back. So that hits the rook.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, he's sort of short on squares for that rook, because if he plays, for instance, to the light square, I think there's maybe tricks where I can move the knight away with tempo on the bishop. And then if he moves the bishop, just say to, I don't know, wherever, now there's a fork
Yeah.
on the
You
king
have
and
the
rook.
fork.
So that's sort of a4 is not really a safe square. A5, hangs
Just
the rook.
hangs a rook. Yeah.
A6 for the same reason I can move away with
Mm,
tempo, and then
hmm.
the rook's in trouble.
Double attack. Yeah.
A7 is covered,
Right.
and A8, I think we're basically kind of repeating. So I was like,
Right.
and I was really excited. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is like a forced repetition. Like, and I was totally fine to take a draw against, he's rated 2300. I'm rated 1970. Like
Right.
it's a complete mismatch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's either going to have to repeat or what he actually did in the game, which is he's going to have to give a concession to keep the game
Mm,
alive. So
right.
anyway, I tempoed the rook, he went back. I tempoed the rook, he went back. I hit the rook, and now if he goes back to A3, I think it's a threefold. So it's sort of like he's either taking the draw or he's going to have to play something to keep the game alive. And of course, if I was rated 350 points above somebody, I would also want to keep the game alive. So he played rook
Yep.
to D8, which is quite a sneaky move because now if you play kind of the obvious that you have this bishop check, but then he can scoot his king here, and now this pawn I was hoping to win is guarded.
Mm,
And so I assume this is
interesting.
probably what he calculated as like a sneaky, like, oh, Kyle's going to play this check, and now I'm going to sneak out, and then, I'm going to defend my pawn. So I was thinking here of just like taking, because I think this is still hanging. If he takes here, I can take with the bishop,
Hmm.
and conveniently it's guarding C3 as well. So there's not even that. I mean, I
That's
guess
nice.
he could play knight takes here, but I mean he's hanging the rook in the corner. He almost wishes his
Right.
his bishop wasn't here because then he would have a fork on my rook, but so his bishop's kind of getting in the way. Anyway, so I kind of thought like that pawn might be hanging regardless, but this was a really nice moment because there's a saying in chess of when you see a good move, look for a better one.
Mm,
And I almost played knight takes d5. It was the whole point of what I was, the whole plan I've done so far was just to get
right.
this pawn. And but I had a nice moment of discipline here where I was like, okay, look at all your checks, captures, and threats, and really force yourself to visualize and see if there's anything there. So I said, well, I think bishop b5 is a mistake, but let's look at it anyway. So check. He does have to move the king, and he only has one square he can go to, which is back here. So now
Hmm.
he's defending this pawn, but then I was sort of like, boy, this king really does not have a lot of room right now with these bishops eyeing in. And I thought if I could, like, any check is basically mate, right? Like if the
Right.
knight's out of the way. And so I sort of was visualizing this position, and then I realized like this king is quite short on squares. And then I realized like, boy, if I could get my knight onto a square that could check his king, how nice would that be? And then I realized I have this really nice move, knight A8. Um,
Oh yeah.
threatening knight takes b6 checkmate.
Wow.
Yeah, which is insane. I mean, how often do you get
That is insane.
the white knight on a8 and it's not a
Right.
disaster? But I was
Jeez.
really proud when I found this. I was like, oh man, I so almost played knight takes d5. And I feel
Right.
like Kalik's probably missed this because I'm sure
Hmm.
he probably saw the check. And I think I would assume, we didn't talk about it afterwards, but I assume he probably looked at king back, the hanging pawn is now defended, and
Yeah.
I think he probably didn't look one move further, and I'm sure he would have
Right.
probably taken the draw or moved his rook somewhere else had he seen this move. So then once I
Right.
played knight a8, I was pretty excited. Um, and how do you stop mate? There's really not a good way to do it without giving up some serious material. I mean, you might
Mm,
consider knight to d7 because that at least guards the square. But that hangs a whole piece, so you can't really do that. Can't move the king, so your choices are pretty limited. So Khalid did play rook to d6, which oof, like it's gone wrong when you're playing this.
yeah.
Um, but then an interesting thing happened. He offered me a draw.
No way.
Yes. And, in my book, this is actually something that has happened to me quite a few times where a stronger player in a worse position will offer a draw. And I'm sure it's happened to many of the people watching this video because it's hard to win a one game in chess. I've had a lot of games where I've had a winning position according to the computer and I've gone on to screw it up. And against a 2300 rated player, it's like, yeah, I know I'm about to win some material, but I was really scared to screw it up. It's like the draw is on the
I would
table.
be.
Yeah, 20 minutes ago, I was trying to get him to do a repetition. Now the
Right.
draw's on the table.
Oh,
But
jeez.
it was like a big thing in my chess growth, which is don't take draws out of fear, like look at
Right.
the position. And if you don't think it's a draw, like play on. What's the worst that could happen? You lose. Okay, I was probably going to lose this game anyway, going into it.
Right.
So I had a moment of I was quite proud to not take the draw.
Nice.
Because I have accepted draws in a similar position before, and I've sort of regretted it, and that's a big thing I tried to work on to improve my chess. Is just like play for the win, and if you lose, okay, then you learn.
Can I just say though, like,
yeah, of course,
I feel like in a position like this, especially after like declining a draw, where like you could have had a draw but you didn't because you have a better position. Like, I feel like there's just so much psychology going on here. You know what I mean? Like, this is the kind of game that I would absolutely lose, like, so easily, because my brain would be like, this is a one game and now I just need to win it. Like, I can win this. Of course I can win this. No pressure, but just win this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And that's, I'm not someone like some people are like really good at dealing with competitive nerves. I think I'm the opposite. Like nerves do really get to me. So yeah, I was definitely terrified. It's like the draw is on the table. But I was proud. I didn't take it because, and the thing is, I had thought about it for probably 20 minutes. And the main thing I was afraid of was, so I will take his, rook on d6, but that weakness I was talking about on c3 looks especially weak when I no longer have a dark square bishop to oppose his. So
True.
it sort of felt like one of the things I think about when I'm playing a stronger player is like, how can I blow this? Like, what are the chances he's looking for? And I feel like some accident on c3, where he forks my king and rook, like that's how he would get back into the game if he is getting
Right.
back into the game. So I calculated, like, tried to as carefully as I could. Like, is there any sort of sequence where that is giving him a ton of counterplay? But then I sort of realized, like, well, if I take on d6, I can play king d2. And that really nicely hangs on to this weakness. And the nice thing is I have f3 played, so he can't even play like knight e4 check. I mean,
Right.
it would hang in that exact position, it would hang the bishop anyway. But
Yeah.
it's sort of like I looked at it and I was like, I don't see his counterplay. Like, I'm sure he'll drum some up. He's a really strong player, but immediately I was like, there's no. So anyway, I was like, no. I said to him, I was like, let's play a few more moves and decline the draw and took his rook. He takes back and then king d2 and
Nice. Beautiful.
yeah. So then he plays bishop back. And then I was a little bit nervous, like, okay, I don't want my knight to get trapped. So I figured, let's take this pawn and run the knight away. He played rook over, which makes sense. I mean, not that this knight is hanging or anything, but if I were to play like knight back to b2, I feel like he would then get his rook into a3. And it's sort of like that counterplay against c3 I was worried about is starting to materialize a little bit.
Right.
So for that reason, I played this move, which I feel like kind of looks a little mysterious, which is a3.
Yeah. I was looking at that one and I'm like, I'm looking forward to hearing what
Yeah,
the
it's
heck
like,
that's all
what
about.
are you doing? Yeah, but no, the reason is because I don't want his rook plunking down on a3, so I
Got
figured
it.
play a3 myself, and now I can bring the knight back, um,
Interesting.
and it's protect. It's that square is not available. So what did he
Cool.
do? He brought the knight around, and I think he's probably now eyeing like maybe someday getting his knight into c4, which looks like kind of a promising square.
Right.
So yeah, knight back makes sense. I brought my knight back. Just keep an eye on c4. I figured, okay, just if he ever gets a knight there, I'll take it.
Right.
So he proceeds with his plan. I push a4, just trying to basically expand. Like ultimately, I'd love to just like these two trade these for this one and get a pass pawn on the
Right.
that side of the board. So
Yeah.
it just made sense to keep pushing those. He plays rook there again, trying to, if he moves the king out of the way, is c3 becoming a little bit weak. So then I played rook over and everything sort of held together, I think. Then he plays this move, bishop e6. I did not see this move. And I think it's quite a nice move because it's sort of like, well, you'd love to play knight c4, but right now it's hanging. So how do you get another defender on the c4
Oh,
square?
yeah.
I
Yeah.
was sort of expecting him to move his king and maybe try to get the rook on that square, but then he plays bishop e6. I'm like, oh yeah, that's quite logical. It's like attacking
Yeah.
the square through the pawn, but
Right.
bishops are long range pieces. That works. So
Yeah.
I did not see that move until he played it, and not that it's like winning or anything, but it's just that it was the first moment where I was like, ooh, like I didn't consider that, and I felt a little
Right.
like a little jittery of like I don't love him playing good moves I did not consider. So I felt
Right.
a little like, yikes, okay, let's just be
Yeah.
careful.
Yeah.
I played a5, and the first line I was calculating here is, okay, he's going to jump in, and I'm going to take with my knight, and he's going to take with his pawn. And I realized like this kind of is a little bit ugly for my bishop. Like I can't
Mm.
really go almost anywhere except a4.
Yep.
That's useful for my bishop. And I thought like this is starting to like he's getting back in the game a little bit. Like my piece
Mm.
is kind of like awkward, and I was a little bit nervous. I always hate giving up my bishop, but the more I looked at it, I was like, actually, I'm probably a lot better off if I take with the bishop here. And the reason is
Oh,
once he takes, now I can hop my knight into this very nice square.
right. Yeah.
Um, so that was a moment where I was
Interesting.
like, it's almost like a little bit counterintuitive. Like the first thing I think of is, oh, take the knight with the knight, keep your nice bishop. But
Right.
I actually did play bishop takes, and now I'm hopping my knight in,
It's
and
kind of scary because he has two bishops and you have none, right? Like,
100%, yeah, it's very scary. But it's one of those like I felt good because like once you sort of like calculate it out, it's like no, no, like
mm,
this makes sense. This does make sense, even though it's like a little counterintuitive. So yeah, he brings the king up. I hop my knight in. And then, yeah, I just basically, again, it's like, how could I blow this game? He could gang up on e3 with a bishop and a rook.
hmm
So, okay, just defend that, a little prophylactically.
hmm
So he pushes
Why not
d5.
with just curious, like is this rook serving a purpose over on h1? Like, is there a reason
Not
why?
really, and it's a good question. It seems more natural to play rook over here, and the main reason
Hmm.
I didn't do it is because I was hoping actually at some point to play e4 myself. Because I want to stop him from advancing his D pawn and ever pushing through and getting counterplay,
Right.
which is quite a nice move. Looks very logical, but tactically it fails because now you've opened this diagonal against your king, and you have a
Ah,
skewer.
yes. Right,
So
right.
even though it's like, well, the H rook's not doing anything, why not bring it over? The main reason actually is because I wanted to step the rook out of that skewer.
That makes
So I
sense.
played that rook over. And that was like a little, by the way, like, as you're calculating, it's like, oh, e4 looks like a good move here. And then when I noticed it allowed the skewer, it's like, it's like one of those little
Yeah.
like calculation heart attack moments. It's like, oh my
Yes.
God, thank God I played that in my head and not on the board.
Oh man, I've
Um,
been there. It's like I don't know. There's weird psychology there too because it's like I notice it and I'm like, oh no, I'm like an idiot and I'm going to lose this game because I didn't see that. But then it's like, well, no, I did see it. Like it may have taken me 5 minutes of calculation before I saw it, but eventually I did see it. So like,
yeah, it's funny. It's like you
everything's
feel,
okay.
it's exactly right. You feel like guilty in your mind. It's like,
Yeah, yeah,
no, you just did see it. That's what that was. But no,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so I don't know if it's like your brain's like I didn't see it sooner or I almost didn't see it, but yeah.
Something, yeah.
Anyway, so that would be a great way to blow your advantage. But so I moved the rook out of that possible tactic, and then he does push d5, and so he's undoubled his pawns. It feels like he's made some improvements, but the nice thing at least is he can't push d4, so he's still hemmed in.
Right,
So now I played g4, and this felt like a little bit of a like, oh, what a mysterious, good player move this is, this like mysterious pawn move. But the logic behind it basically was I'm afraid he's going to get his bishop to f5 and then plunk it on d3. And that felt like that was bad. So I sort of was like,
yeah,
well, let me just take a tempo to try and cut off some of the squares for his bishop.
right.
And, basically they say it's this principle of like in the end game, don't rush, just kind of take away some
Mm,
squares and build things up. So yeah, that felt like a pretty reasonable move just to kind of blunt his bishop a little bit. So he steps his king up. I step my king over. I think again I was considering maybe pushing e4 at some point, and I just wanted to be out of the checks of that bishop. And then
right,
also, the d5 pawn is like a target at this point. I mean, the knight is pressuring it, and it's a backward pawn he can't push. So I also
right,
move the king to then pile up on the d file and go after that pawn was I think
right.
also part of what I was thinking. So yeah, he defends the pawn. I lift my rook up, and then he plays h5. I just felt like I don't need to take out. I can just ignore it. So I brought my
Mhm.
other rook over, and I'm starting to pile up on d5.
So why move this rook up first? I guess maybe because if you move that rook over, then it just feels a little more awkward to double up. Maybe like was that the logic
Yeah,
there?
pretty much, pretty much. I'm not sure what the smartest way to double these up is, and for anyone that's watched the video of our game, I did a similar move and where I was like trying to be fancy and how I doubled my rooks, and it was not a good move. But
Right.
yeah, I mostly just thought like get them on the two different files first to double up, just because if the H file does end up opening, I kind of wanted to be able to swing over and play like rook, this rook to H2, and they're doubled
Right.
instantly. Whereas, yeah, if I slide, the more normal looking thing might be to just go here first and then play, the rook up and then play the other rook over or something like that. But it just felt like keep my options open move to play
Mm.
this rook here. There's no real super deep reason other than it just felt like I'd be able to respond to what he did better if I did it this way. Um,
Right.
so yeah, it's there's no like super important reason, but it just seemed natural. So yeah, he plays h5, and then I played this rook over. He takes, and then f5. Yeah, and
Mm.
I kind of thought like, this is a little scary. Like if I
Yeah.
take and he plays bishop takes, isn't he sort of getting what he wants here?
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting to play though e4, and the d pawn is pinned to the rook.
Yes.
So then he would presumably have to move the bishop away. I actually looking at this with the computer, I think there's some crazy line where he can actually just take this. And yes, the rook is hanging, but he's also setting up a discovered attack against my king,
Oh, yeah, he
which
is.
I admit I did not see in the game. So if I take this, he can play takes with check
Mm-hmm.
that way, and maybe take a quick peek at the computer evaluation. This is still okay for me, I guess, if I play king d2. But anyway, it's these kind of complications are the exact thing I would like to avoid. So
Yeah.
I didn't, I have to confess, I didn't fully see those continuations. I just thought, well, the pawn's pinned and it tempos his bishop. And so that's a good
Right.
moment of like, it happens to have worked out for me, but what if it didn't? Like that's a
Right.
moment where this could have gone south. So it was a good
Right.
moment of like, calculate a little more carefully, I suppose. Anyway, so he plays f5, takes, and maybe he saw a similar line. He actually took with this pawn, which I think is nice for me. So now I
Mm.
double up on this weakness.
Mm-hmm.
I've got three hits. He's got two defenders, and the only way he can put another defender on the pawn is to go here, I believe. But
Yeah.
speaking of the pawn or the pin on the d pawn,
Mm.
now I can take
Yeah. Now
c4.
you grab that.
So I'm sure
Nice.
this is not. This is not an oversight. Like I'm sure he saw this and probably decided like, well, I'd rather give up the c pawn than the d pawn, because if he just
Right.
makes a whatever move and I crash through by taking on d5, like that's probably worse for him. So I don't think he
Right.
overlooked this. He probably just decided, better to give this
Yeah.
up than the other. So then he swings his rook over, just trying to get some counterplay. That's a thing strong players will do, is they don't do passive defense where they try to hunker down. They defend
Right.
actively. It's like, well, I'm going to go after you and at least try to draw up some counterplay. So, but I just continue going after the d pawn. He attacks my f pawn, and I sort of calculated like, I think his d pawn's worth more than my f pawn, so just give it up. Don't worry about bringing the rook over to defend it.
Hmm.
Play actively.
Right.
And he does have to be a little careful here, because I do have some tricks. Like for example, if he just takes the knight, which looks natural, and takes here, and then if he takes the hanging pawn, this is checkmate.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So I do have some tact, and even if that wasn't checkmate, there's some lines where maybe like I check here, and he can't step back because I'll check and win the bishop.
Right.
I mean, I guess he could step up, but then that might be a mating net. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
like a lot of pressure against his king if he takes that
Right.
knight. So he just took the pawn. He left the knight where it was. And then I played c4, basically just trying to continue to take away squares from his king, because his king is sort of hemmed
Right.
in here a little bit. Like with
Yeah.
the knight on d5, he can't step back to c7. If he ever steps back to d7, he's in the firing line of my rook. So his king is
Yep.
getting a little squeezed here.
Mm.
So yeah, c4, just to sort of take away some squares from his king. He plays bishop e5. I did not consider that move. It's quite a logical move and a pretty good one, because a lot of my tricks revolve around his bishop hanging on g7, but now it's like, well, just move it, and now the tactics don't work as well. He also covers d6, which is like a fork square I might want for my rooks later. So
Yeah.
that felt like one of those really nice, like, hey, I'm a national master. Here's my good defensive moves.
Right. Yes.
So yeah, anyway, that I did not see that, and I was like, okay, that's a really good move.
That is nice.
Yeah. So let me see here. So I played rook up. My thinking was I kind of want to bring my king in to like maybe b3 and a4 eventually.
Okay.
to sort of support pushing my pawns, maybe getting a pass pawn. But
Right.
tactically, if I step up right away, I think it's like he can take here, and then I feared my e pawn was going to fall with check. I mean, I guess I could take with this, but it just felt like the e pawn was a little too weak, so I thought defend
Yeah.
it first. So I played rook
Right.
d3, and then he just played basically a waiting move. Now I step my king up. He goes, and this is just classic, like looking for his counterplay. That dark square
Oh yeah,
bishop's
geez.
still eyeing, so it's not quite mate, but it looks very scary.
Right.
So I don't want any of this. Again, it's like how do you screw this game up? Allowing something like that feels like a good first step. So I
Right.
just
Yeah.
said, just block it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So he goes back to threaten my pawn, and now I step up. And yeah, I was feeling pretty good here. I was calculating, I was trying to find like kind of a knockout punch. And so, again, I have all these mating net ideas. Like if he takes the knight, I can take with the rook, and this pawn isn't hanging because, again, the same mating motif.
Oh
Um,
yes. Okay.
so I sort of calculated that and realized,
Huh.
like, even though it looks like I'm kind of giving up the defense of this e pawn, I'm not
Yeah.
really.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sort of looking for knockout blows at this point. And then he plays rook f3, and now I was actually quite low on the clock. I didn't write my times down, but there's a DGT recording, so I'll maybe someday go back and check it. But I was
Right.
I was under 3 minutes, I'm sure. And I'm trying to find the knockout blow, and so I'm sort of like calculating, like, okay, b5 check. He can't really step back because, again, the knight covers c7, and if he steps onto the d file, it's feels like that's a pretty scary looking discovery.
Yep.
So b5 check, but then king steps up to c7, and is my c pawn kind of getting in trouble? You know, uh,
Or
yeah, like, so basically, like, if I check and he steps
yeah.
up, like, I'm wondering if my
Steps up.
c
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I'm wondering if my c pawn is kind of getting into trouble because you don't want to try your knockout punch and then have him wiggle out of it and get the c pawn, and
Right.
it's like maybe it's still winning, but you want to find the sequence that really finishes the game.
Yeah.
But then I found quite a nice move, low on time. So check, king here, and then knight b6, which on the surface you sort of like, wait, doesn't this just hang c4? However, because the king is in such an awkward position, you can just pin the bishop,
Oh.
and he can't actually defend it a second time. The rook can't even come here to defend laterally because the pawn guards it.
Right.
So he's going to be losing the piece at least. So that's what I calculated. There's actually an even nicer finish here, which I didn't see, because once I saw I can pin the piece, I'm like, at least I have that. So
Right.
I don't need to find anything fancier.
Right.
But this is a fun, like, puzzle rush moment. You don't even need to pin the bishop. Pause the video if you want to solve it. But my friend came up to me and said, like, "Oh, nice, you calculated the mate at the end there." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Apparently, you can go rook to d5 check, and that is
Oh.
a pretty nice
wow.
finish. I did not
that's
see
beautiful.
this. Yeah, really beautiful. And if he takes it, the bishop is actually mate.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
so that's
That's
pretty
a good
nice. Yeah. So my friend found that. But even crazier, actually, I think there's even mate in one with knight d7 here, which I didn't see either. But
Oh, it is too. That's interesting. I was looking at knight d7 and I'm like, what happens if you knight d7? Like maybe you at least, like, I don't know, get the bishop later or something like that. But that's actually checkmate. Wow.
yeah, no. So anyway, maybe I need to study
Fascinating.
a few more of my checkmate puzzles. But once I saw knight b6, I was like, at least I'm pinning and winning that piece. That's enough for me. I don't need to, I was low on time. So anyway, so yeah, I played knight b6, and actually he resigned. So he maybe he saw the mate and I didn't.
Right. There you go.
But yeah, so I was absolutely elated. Easily the best result of my whole chess career, and
Yeah.
pretty pumped. But yeah, it was a fun game. A lot of he did such a good job of, like, always trying to generate, like, a little threat or a little improvement, or set up this sequence where my bishop on b5 would end up not really being active. So he did
Right.
a really good job of fighting, despite the
Yeah.
material deficit. But I feel I also managed to hold my nerves enough to not blunder some big tactic or do something stupid. So
Yeah.
one of the most stressful afternoons of my life.
But
one of the most
it paid
jubilant
off.
also.
Yeah. I mean, it's always neat to see strong players defend, right? Like when they're in a worse position, like they find every possible resource and they do not give up. You know,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, I actually, as a quick aside, I got a taste of the other side of this equation in my fourth round game of this tournament. I played a very strong up and coming player, Louis Fillmore, and I made a totally stupid blunder in the middle game. He found a really nice tactic, and it was funny because the amount of material I went up against Khalik, so an exchange and a pawn, I blundered that against
Oh no.
Louis. And so I was on the other side of trying to defend and trying to see if I get him in time trouble and finding counterplay. So yeah, it is something I admire about players that are much stronger than me, and I try my best to emulate with mixed success. But you are right, like a strong player, if they've got tricks, they'll try to find them. And yeah, so Khalik certainly defended really well.
And you went on to get a shutout at this tournament, 5 for 5, which is a pretty amazing result. And I believe brought your rating up to the coveted over 2,000 mark, over 2,100 mark, I believe.
Yes, it was quite a jump.
yeah, because you talked in your book quite a bit about trying to reach that 2,000 mark, and then recently you did, and I think you told me it was for about like 3 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that.
It was a little embarrassing, but yeah, I finally in November got over 2,000, and in my book, as you say, it's like this was like this sort of milestone I really wanted to hit. I finally hit it. I was so excited. And then a couple of weeks later, we had like a small tournament in Cape Breton where I live. And yeah, I didn't have a very good tournament. And it was like 3 weeks later, I fell back out of the 2000s. And I was like, well, I did it though.
Yeah, you did.
But yeah, off the back of the, off the good result in this tournament, yeah, 5 for 5, amazing. Like still surreal, hasn't really sunk in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I jumped all the way to I think 2148 is my new rating, which I didn't even really know you could jump that high if your rating wasn't provisional. But pretty exciting. I never really thought I'd be ever a 2100 player, so it's surreal.
Right.
Hopefully, I'll be able to hang on to that a little more than 3 weeks, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, just stop playing tournaments,
Yeah, just sit on it. Yeah, we have a tournament coming up in May 17th and 18th in Cape Breton.
Right.
So that'll be a prime spot for me to go and see if I can drop 50 rating points. I'd actually never won sole first place in a tournament either before. So that was a big,
nice,
a big weekend for me.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, I was playing in the same section as you, obviously, since the previous video. We walked over our game, and I think this was my first time being in like the upper section of a tournament, but like rating wise and skill wise, I was like at the bottom of that section, and it's an interesting place to be because like you're going to struggle and probably lose a lot of games, but like I totally believe strongly that you either win or you learn, right? And so there's definitely lots to be learned by playing against strong players and struggling through it and kind of figuring out where your game needs to improve. So definitely
100%. Yeah, no better way to improve than that. I spent like the vast majority of my chess playing career in that exact spot, like the lower half of the upper section, basically. So yeah, it can be it can be tough, but it is a great learning experience. So I think that's the exact right mindset.
Well, big congrats on your result in this tournament, and hopefully we'll sit across the table from each other again in a tournament coming up.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and I appreciate the chance to go over my game. So thank you. It's a lot of fun.
I hope you enjoyed that game, and I hope you learned something from it. If you liked these videos that I did with Kyle, you'll definitely like his book, My Chess Memoir. Check that out in the description below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.